Review messages Sunday, 6:04 p.m.
Yeah, I don't know what the going on. You got your phone on with you with your husband or something?
The police said that he had called her phone like 300 times that night. So yes, I was concerned. We had hope that she was still alive, but it was hard. It's hard to describe unless you have somebody that you care for goes missing. I'm sorry.
This case was the first no-body murder trial in Baltimore County. Not only did we not have a body, we didn't even have a crime scene. But before we can establish that someone murdered Tracy Tetzo, we have to establish that Tracy Tetzo is dead. He wanted to hurt her because he couldn't control her. You know, she was slipping out of his hands, and he wasn't gonna have it. And to this day, he still has control of her. He knows where she is, but nobody else does. Nobody else can have her. Nobody else can see her. She's all his. And I have no doubt he'll go to wherever he put her. I have no doubt. Tracy was my foster sister. I hate putting that label on there, so we'll just say she was my sister. Both my mother and I worked at a girl shelter, and she ended up being one of the girls there. Tracy was probably 14, 15. There was issues at home, so she was removed from the home and brought to the shelter. She just spread her smile to everybody else. I couldn't really show her favoritism, but she knew she was my favorite, Mom's favorite. So we thought, hey, what if we became her foster family? So we went to her social worker and got the process started, and we were accepted, and we told her, and she cried, and she came home with us. She was definitely family. When I first met Dennis, he was a little quiet. And Tracy is a fun person. She wants everybody to be happy. She liked parties and going places. So I just thought it was just an odd coupling. But Tracy had told me that he had been asking to get married, and she was thinking about saying yes. And I asked her, "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Because she was one who used to always say she was never going to get married. Honestly, I had to say, I didn't think it would actually happen. I figured at some point she would, back away, but she didn't. They were together several years before she got married. The wedding, it was lovely. Everything was beautiful. She was beautiful. She seemed very happy.
She looked so pretty in that dress. And there's the mullet. Before the wedding, Dennis was supposed to get his hair trimmed and get rid of his mullet. He didn't, and she was not happy. She was not happy at all. But she loved him. Yeah. They were happy. I met Tracy when she got a job working with us. We worked for a concrete materials supplier. Her husband, Dennis, drove a truck for us, and she came to work in the dispatch. Tracy and I got along great. The fact that she loved music, and I love music too, and live concerts. Tracy would tell you, next month I'm going to Ozfest. I won't be here. I'm taking off. She just loved life and loved to enjoy it, and she was rough around the edges, but if you knew Tracy, she was very kind-hearted. March 7th, 2005, I was doing the work at 8 o'clock. As soon as I sat down, the phone rang. It was Christian. I had never spoken with Christian before. He was a driver at our company. He said, "Monica, this is Christian, Tracy's friend. Is she in yet?" I said, "No, she's coming in late. She was going to a concert." And that's when he explained we were supposed to go to the concert together, and she never arrived. I found that very odd because Tracy would not have missed that concert. At that point, I wasn't too upset. I explained to him, wait an hour, because Tracy's always on time. She always shows up, and if she doesn't, she will call me. I was busy answering phones and dispatching and managing, and I waited till 9 and she didn't show. That's when I knew something was wrong. That's not Tracy. Tracy, if she's due at work, she's gonna be at work. So yes, I was concerned. I called her and, no answer.
How you doing? This is Tracy calling back. Bye.
I contacted Dennis and I said, "Have you seen Tracy? She hasn't shown up." He just felt, oh, she's probably drunk somewhere over at a friend's house. And I said, "She may stay over at a friend's house, but she's back there to take care of her dogs." And those were her babies. And I said, "I'm gonna make some phone calls." I just had a sinking feeling. I knew that something bad had happened. So I contacted hospitals, and I said, "Do you have any Jane Does?" It was hard. What if they said yes? What if she was dead? I didn't know what they anticipate. I was panicking. Where was she?
When I first got assigned to the case, 4 years after her disappearance, I am handed a blue book provided by the Baltimore County Police Department. It's basically the entire contents of the police investigation. Before I opened the book, I knew very little about this case. I knew that Tracy Tetso had disappeared on the way to a Motley Crue concert and that she'd not been found. What Dennis told police was that he was at home outside, that Tracy came home from a store and she went in the house. He decided to take a shower and he estimated that this was around 6 to 6:30. When he finished his shower, he came back out into the house and that Tracy was gone, her car was gone. She left without telling him where she was going, and he never saw her again after that. When police asked Dennis what he thought happened to Tracy, he said she had probably been out drinking and stayed at her boyfriend's house the night before. He suspected Tracy was having an affair. This is extremely important in any investigation, but especially in this case when investigators literally did not know what had happened to Tracy.
This is Tracy's school picture. But she says, keep this forever and ever, haha. I love you and don't forget it. Love, Tracy. Still got it. I told her I would, and I'm gonna keep it forever and ever. She was pretty special. She was definitely one of a kind. I love it.
That Monday, when we couldn't find her, I left work early to go try to help find her and drive around anywhere I could that she might be, which any of her hangouts, you know. We didn't find anything. From the start, I stayed in touch with Dennis. He was legitimately concerned, you know, that she was missing.
I woke up in the morning, she wasn't there. I thought she stayed at her friend's house. You just don't disappear. There's no way. You just don't disappear. Tracy, please call somebody and come home, please.
From the beginning of the investigation, Dennis did seem to be cooperative with police. Certainly, he spoke with them and agreed to be interviewed by them, answered their questions, and made himself available to police. This is a photograph taken of Dennis Tetso's neck, and you can see that there are 2 small scratches on the right side of his throat. Investigators were looking for any sign that there had been a struggle, but it was later determined that these marks were more likely created by a piece of jewelry that Dennis wore. In looking around their home, there were no signs of blood or any evidence of a struggle. Investigators had to consider the possibility that Tracy had merely left town. Dennis revealed to detectives that he was aware that his wife Tracy was having an affair, and he told police that it wasn't unusual for her not to come home and not tell him where she was. There were no signs that she had packed anything up. But Tracy had a black sports car that she loved, that she didn't let anyone else drive, that was missing along with her. Police were very interested in locating the car. They put out a BOLO, or be on the lookout, to police forces around the country, and that information was put out by the media as well. And we learned that the car went through the Harbor Tunnel at 7:48 p.m. on March 6, 2005, from records from E-ZPass. Investigators learned that Tracy visited a drugstore. After that, there were no credit card purchases made by Tracy. They then were able to find a receipt linked to that shopping visit. They were able to obtain surveillance video from the drugstore showing Tracy Tetso at the location. That clip is important because that may be the last image of Tracy that we have. In examining Tracy's phone records, detectives found that the last call Tracy made from her phone was a call to Christian Sinnott at 3 o'clock on March 6th of 2005. Investigators learned that Christian Sinnott was the man Tracy Tetzo was having an affair with at the time of her disappearance. He was the person that she was supposed to spend that evening with. Police learned that he attempted to call Tracy numerous times on March 6th.
New messages, Sunday, 6:04 p.m.
Baby girl, what are you doing? Come on, please. Give me a call. I'm gonna come up to your house. Maybe I'll wait as long as it takes for you. Okay, yeah. Please call me when you can. Bye. This is not cool, man. I don't know what the going on. You got your phone on with you with your husband or something?
Because Christian Sinnott was the person that Tracy was having an affair with at the time that she disappeared, the police were definitely interested in speaking with him.
I wanted to help find her. And right away we started putting the word out. A fan had wrote in to Motley Crue and had told them that, you know, their biggest fan didn't show up for their concert in DC. So they got in touch with the police and they wanted to donate $10,000 towards her reward fund. We organized searches. We did that all ourselves and got together and said, we're gonna do this for Tracy, and we did. We had hope that she was still alive, but you know, you get your hopes up and then you're down in the dumps again. You just, it's hard to describe unless you have somebody that you care for goes missing. I'm sorry. I did not know Christian, so yes, I was concerned. I knew Christian was like a muscle guy, bodybuilder, and I didn't know, did he do something? The police said that he had called her phone like 300 times that night. Tracy said Christian was very sweet to her, but I wasn't sure what he was capable of.
Police did take a look at Christian Sinnott. They learned that the last cell phone call Tracy made was to Christian at 3 o'clock on March 6th, 2005. But what their investigation revealed is that his cell phone records put him nowhere near the location of her disappearance in Baltimore, and instead corroborated his account that he was in the DC area waiting for Tracy and attending that concert. What their investigation revealed is that he could be ruled out. Police located Tracy's car on the lot of a motel, actually not that far from her home in a neighboring county. Police wanted to take a look inside the car, so their natural starting point was to ask Dennis, figuring the husband of the car owner would have a set of keys. Police went to Dennis's house. He agreed to meet them there to hand over the keys. He said that they were the spare set of keys. There was no forensic evidence found inside. There was no evidence of a struggle. There was no blood. There was no indication of where she had gone. Police did conduct a search. They looked in the area. They asked all witnesses in the area if they had seen Tracy, but the police were not able to find Tracy. However, they were able to recover a video from the hotel that showed the parking lot. This is the surveillance video from the motel parking lot, dated March 6th, 2005, the day Tracy Tetso disappeared. And it shows her vehicle pulling onto the lot and parking in a space. You can see a shadowy figure emerge from the driver's side door of the car. The video camera is too far away to reveal who the person is. You are really not able to view any features of the person. You're not even necessarily able to tell their gender. But you can say, based on their proximity to the next door vehicle, that they appear to be a taller individual. I probably watched this clip over 50 times, but ultimately it was impossible to make an identification.
A couple days after we got the news about Tracy being missing, we got the phone call from the detective, and he asked if I could meet with him in person. When I saw that video, I was sitting down and I looked at it and I stood up and I said, "It's that son of a bitch Dennis. That's Dennis." That was the first thought in my head when I saw that person get out of that car. Tracy's short like I am. Dennis is very tall. There was a pickup truck next to the car. So when they got out, they're much taller than the pickup truck. Straight up not Tracy. My first thought, Dennis. I had no doubt. None.
At first, I believe that Tracy and Dennis were happy. They were happy. They got along well. They liked going to concerts. They had a good time together. But Dennis was very possessive. He didn't trust Tracy. I told Tracy, I said, if someone does not trust you, how can you have a relationship? She goes, I know, but I love him. Yeah, love is blind. So it was always there, but it really got worse after they got married. One night, Tracy and I went to dinner at a restaurant. Dennis kept calling. I would think at least 10, 15 times. What are you doing? How long are you going to be? Who are you with? Tracy was very frustrated with that. She'd really start complaining about she can't go anywhere. She believed that he was borrowing people's vehicles to follow her, to spy on her, and she broke down and told me that she got accused every day of cheating on him. And she told me, she said, if I'm gonna be accused of it, I might as well. She said, Christian was being so nice to me, and one thing led to another. She said, I never meant for it to happen. She didn't want to. He pushed her into that. And that's when everything went downhill. Dennis had contacted one of my coworkers and asked him to check around to see if Tracy was messing around on him. So our coworker was listening to phone conversations, and he found several conversations and contacted Dennis to come up and listen to those recordings. Dennis heard Tracy speaking with another man on the phone. Dennis, from what I understand, was very mad, very upset with Tracy. Around January of 2005, she was really done with him. Tracy had asked him to move out. He had moved stuff out and put in 2 storage containers he had. So we thought he was leaving.
Dispatch.
I ain't gotta be out by the end of the month.
You got 30 days then.
Any problem? I'll be out of house. You ain't gotta worry about it. I just hope you know you're making the right decision.
Well, I'm not going to be with somebody who's like you.
Oh, like me?
Yep. You're going to be a jerk. I'm going to be a bitch. I'm tired of being calm and everything about all this. I about had it up to my eyeballs with you and your mess.
That's, wow. She told him like it was. She didn't hold back. She wasn't afraid of anybody. She'd tell you the way it was. Yeah. I miss hearing her.
What we learned about Tracy's job was that as a dispatcher, her telephone calls at work were recorded, and the police were able to listen to numerous conversations between her and her husband, Dennis Tetzo.
But no, you know what? You're still not happy because you want the house to yourself so you can bring people in there, whoever you see,
Whatever.
and show everybody.
What
You want
Okay, now show everybody.
Tracy, you brag about the house.
How do I brag about it? I'm proud of my house. Bottom line.
It was clear from listening to phone conversations between Dennis and Tracy that she viewed the home they lived in as very much hers. And it was a home she bought, and she wanted him out. She wanted him to take his things and leave. This was not a woman who would just disappear of her own volition. In looking at this video, it did occur to us that we are potentially looking at Tracy's murderer. And there was some frustration associated with the fact that we couldn't actually identify that person from the video. But the police were able to use this video in another very important way. When you see the lights flash in the video, it indicates that the car has been locked with a remote key fob. When Dennis handed the keys to police, he said that they were the spare set of keys. So the next step in the investigation was to determine who had the other keys. Police just started to ask, well, how many sets of keys did she have for the car? They spoke with the previous owner of the vehicle, the person that had sold it to Tracy, and asked him how many sets of keys did he sell with the car. He said there was 1 set of keys and 1 remote. The only person who said that there was a spare set was Dennis. So it looked like Dennis was the person who parked Tracy's car on that lot. Ultimately, with the information the police had, they did believe that Dennis Tetso was the prime suspect and the person responsible for Tracy's death. But before we can establish that someone murdered Tracy Tetso, we have to establish that Tracy Tetso is dead. Not only did we not have a body, we didn't even have a crime scene. Police believe that they had their murder suspect. But without recovering her body and without any new leads or information, it seems like the investigation has hit a dead end.
With Tracy missing, we just figured nothing was gonna happen. It was a cold case. She wasn't gonna be found. Nobody was gonna get convicted. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
As the years went by, the police continued to check into any new identity that Tracy might have found somewhere else. The U.S. Marshals were involved in trying to establish that she was somewhere else. It seemed she was really just gone. And for the state's case, we need to prove that she's deceased, and time worked in our favor. We waited until we felt that sufficient time had passed to truly establish beyond any doubt that Tracy Tetso was dead, and we went ahead and made the decision to charge Dennis Tetso with her murder.
Can I get you anything to drink? Yes. You want something to drink? Water? Okay. Mentioned to you briefly up there, you were charged with the murder of your wife, Tracy Tetso, who disappeared on March 6, 2005. I've been beating the bush, going back and talking to friends of yours, friends of hers, family members, neighbors, you name it. Monday, I met with the grand jury in Baltimore County and presented a case to the grand jurors, and they voted unanimously to indict you for the first-degree murder of your wife. You may have moved on with your life. You'll never forget March 6, 2005. Never. Do you have any questions on me?
I want to talk to my attorney.
In the days leading up to a trial, I felt very nervous. This case was the first no-body murder trial in Baltimore County. So there had never been even an attempt to try someone for murder when the body of the victim was not recovered. If we failed in our prosecution and Dennis was found not guilty, that would be it. There was a lot of pressure, but what we had was the fact that he had means, motive, and opportunity. Their deteriorating relationship, the fact that he had the only keys for her car, the fact that the shadowy figure in the video is about the same height as Dennis Tetso. The recorded phone calls between the two of them that clearly established Tracy wanted Dennis out of the house. Dennis was reluctant to going. He worked for a construction company. He had access to equipment that moved debris to be dumped at sites that were then filled in with concrete. So If you're going to make someone disappear, this seemed like one of the most effective ways to do it. The judge sentenced him to 18 years, and then he would be released to a period of supervised probation. And if he were to violate the conditions of his probation, he could potentially go back to jail for the balance of that sentence, up to 30 years. I do not believe that the punishment fit the crime. It just doesn't seem like justice for Tracy or her friends and family. But the fact that this was the first no-body murder tried in Baltimore County and that we were successful really paved the way for future cases. The fact that we were able to convict Dennis Tetzo of murder, I think meant so much to Tracy's friends and family. I think they felt vindicated. They felt validated.
I was ecstatic that he got convicted, second-degree murder, but we wanted first-degree. I believe if you take a life, your life should be taken. Eye for an eye. I have to say, as time went on, I started to wonder, nothing's ever gonna happen. You know, she's just gonna disappear out of everybody's memory but we got justice. I know she's happy that we fought for her. I still talk to her, you know? I believe she's in a much better place than we are, you know? But I'll talk to her every once in a while and just say, hey, missed you down here. I'm here now. Stop your blubbering. Excuse my French.
The hardest part of all this is knowing that Dennis is going to get out and be free to walk the earth, and Tracy's not. And it's not fair. He wanted to hurt her because he couldn't control her. You know, she was slipping out of his hands. And he wasn't going to have it. And to this day, he still has control of her. He knows where she is, but nobody else does. Nobody else can have her. Nobody else can see her. She's all his. And I have no doubt that when he gets out of prison, he'll go to wherever he put her. Because that's his claim. She's his property. Nobody else can have her now. Just his. And he'll go see her. I have no doubt.
It begins with a single breath in the dark, shallow trembling fading into the cold air of a night that no one remembered anymore. 40 years have passed, yet the echo of that breath still clings to the forgotten outskirts of Hollow Ridge, a place where the wind carries more secrets than stories, and where one name whispered only in unease continues to weigh on the town like a lingering curse. They called it the Ridgeway Cold Case, a headline washed in yellow folded into the dusty drawers of old detectives who retired with regret carved into their faces, a story that slipped away from the news cycle but never loosened its grip on the community. And tonight, for the first time in 4 decades, the past stirred again. The file was thin, too thin for a life that vanished without a trace. One photograph, grainy and overexposed, caught a girl mid-laugh, unaware that this moment would be the last image anyone would ever see of her. Her name was Emily Carter, 17, bright-eyed, a barista at the local diner, planning for college, planning for tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. She walked out of her shift on a stormy November evening and stepped directly into the jaws of a mystery that swallowed her whole. Hollow Ridge changed that night. People locked their doors, peered from behind curtains, pretended everything was safe, while fear gnawed at the edges of every conversation. A missing girl in a small town is not just a tragedy, it's a fracture, a crack that spread silently across friendships, families, trust itself. Emily's parents searched the woods until their voices gave out. Officers combed ravines, drained creek beds, questioned strangers, questioned neighbors, questioned anyone who might have blinked at the wrong time. Nothing. No footprints, no car tracks, no body, no confession. Just a void that grew larger every year. And somewhere buried deep beneath the layers of silence, a sliver of truth waited. That truth resurfaced on a quiet Monday morning inside a cramped, fluorescent-lit evidence room when a technician sorting through old boxes let out a small, startled gasp. The box was marked as unsolved. Its label faded, its tape peeling. Inside a thin plastic bag held an item no one had bothered to test again, an orange scarf found near the edge of the forest behind the diner. It had been dismissed decades ago as belonging to someone else, irrelevant, unimportant. But inside the knot of that scarf lay a faint stain, preserved by time and luck. A stain that avoided contamination, a stain that had waited longer than most people in town had been alive. The technician pulled up the latest DNA system, a far more advanced registry than the outdated databases from the 80s. The machine hummed quietly, unaware that history trembled around it. And then hit. Not a weak match, not a partial alignment. A perfect, undeniable, impossible match. A name blinked on the screen, a name that should never have been there. A name belonging to someone who wasn't even alive when Emily went missing. That was the moment investigators froze. That was the moment everything they thought they understood collapsed. But before the shock, before the disbelief, there was the night Emily disappeared. Wind lashed through the tall pines of Hollow Ridge like a furious warning, bending branches until they cracked like bones in the dark. Emily stepped into the storm, hugging her jacket tightly, her hair whipped across her face, her footsteps muffled by the heavy rain. She wasn't afraid. She made the walk home hundreds of times. Her mother always left the back porch light on for her. A tiny beacon cutting through the dark. But that night the light flickered strangely, as if struggling to stay alive. Witnesses recall seeing Emily at the bus stop around 10:14 p.m., though she wasn't waiting for a bus, the last one had passed an hour earlier. She was speaking to someone, voices raised as if in argument, though the storm drowned out most of the sound. The figure with her was never identified. The description was vague, blurred by fear and memory, tall male wearing a hood. That detail became the ghost that haunted every theory, the hooded stranger, the faceless shadow, the man who got away. At 10:21 p.m., the lights on Maple Street went out, the entire block plunged into darkness for 13 seconds. Some say those 13 seconds are all it took. Others believe Emily never even made it past the diner parking lot. But when the lights returned, she was gone. Not vanished, erased. Police found her backpack several days later, torn open, the contents scattered like debris from a violent storm. Her favorite necklace, a silver locket engraved with her initials, lay half buried under dead leaves. The crime scene felt staged, curated, as if someone placed just enough evidence to confuse, not clarify. Every clue contradicted another. Every theory died before it lived. And with each passing year, the cold case thickened like ice over a lake, sealing away every hope of resolution. Detective Randall Pierce still remembers the case vividly. Even now, retired and gray-haired, he keeps Emily's picture on his desk, angled toward him like a promise he never fulfilled. Back then, he was young, determined, burning with the belief that every puzzle had an answer if you just looked hard enough. But Emily's disappearance broke something inside him. He chased leads into dead ends, followed anonymous tips that spiraled into nothing. Interrogated suspects who smiled too easily or shook too nervously. Yet no crack appeared. No slip. No confession. But there was one detail he never spoke of, one that gnawed at him for years: the orange scarf. It didn't belong to Emily. Her mother confirmed that. So whose scarf was it? Why was it tied so tightly, as if used to gag or restrain? And why had the forensic team dismissed it so quickly, calling it irrelevant, when it lay only a few yards from where Emily was last seen? Randall saved that question for himself, wrote it in the margins of his notes, circled it, underlined it, then buried it when the case went cold. Until today. The DNA match belonged to a young man named Lucas Harding, aged 19, living 2 towns away. He had a minor record trespassing, petty theft, a bar fight at 17, but nothing violent enough to raise suspicion. But Lucas wasn't alive during the crime. He was born 21 years after Emily disappeared. Yet his DNA appeared on the scarf, as if he had tied it with his own hands. Investigators stared at the screen, their expressions tightening. Someone had touched that scarf recently. Someone connected to Lucas. Someone who might have kept it for decades. Someone who might have been waiting, watching, hiding in plain sight. And suddenly the past wasn't past anymore. Emily's name resurfaced in the town's whispers like a ghost returning for justice. Old neighbors looked at one another with suspicion. People who had lived peacefully for years now wondered who among them carried a secret soaked in 4 decades of silence. The cold case was no longer an unsolved tragedy. It was a burning headline, a shockwave ripping through Hollow Ridge. Detective Maren Cole, the lead investigator, now reopening the case, pressed her palm against the evidence table and stared at the scarf as if it might speak. She could almost sense the weight of the years embedded in its fibers, the cries it had absorbed, the story it refused to reveal. A cold chill traced her spine. She knew what this meant. DNA doesn't lie, but people do. Somewhere out there, the person responsible had grown older, smarter, careful enough to avoid suspicion for 40 years, a predator with patience, a shadow that blended into the town so flawlessly no one ever looked twice. Maren lifted the scarf gently. The knot still held its shape, too tight, too deliberate. Whoever tied it did so with intent. And that intent lingered on the fabric like a fingerprint from the darkness. For the first time in 40 years, the Ridgeway cold case breathed again, and its breath was ice. The scarf rested beneath the sterile lights of the forensics lab, a silent survivor of a night that had devoured everything else. Its fibers carried time like a wound frayed, weathered, soaked in the dampness of 4 forgotten decades. Yet the knot remained rigid, locked, with the kind of tension only fear or violence could carve into cloth. Detective Maren Cole studied every inch of it, her breath slow, her pulse quickening as if the fabric itself might recoil at being touched after so many years of silence. She knew cold cases didn't come back to life without demanding something in return. While the DNA match to Lucas Harding shocked the department, Maren felt something deeper, something far heavier. This wasn't an accident or coincidence. Cold cases don't just reopen. They get dragged back into the light by someone who wants them to be found. The eerie thought lingered as she left the lab and stepped into the dim hallway outside. The building was old, its floors creaking under every footstep, its walls lined with black and white mugshots from eras long gone. Tonight, the air felt charged, restless, as though the entire precinct sensed the tremor Emily Carter's name created. Maren walked toward the conference room where the task force waited. Most were too young to remember the original investigation. They knew the cold case only from faded reports and local lore whispered by older officers who still felt the sting of failure. But every one of them sat straight alert, the weight of the moment hanging like a storm cloud. The DNA match is legitimate, Maren said without preamble, placing the scarf at the center of the table. We ran it twice. No errors. No contamination. A hush fell, eyes widened, jaws tightened. But Lucas Harding wasn't born until 2001, Officer Hale murmured. How the hell is his DNA on something recovered in 1981? Maren didn't answer. Not yet. She wanted them to sit with the impossibility to feel the fracture line running through the facts. Cold cases survive on contradictions, and this one was just beginning to bleed. Detective Rowan, a veteran with a face carved in lines of cynicism, leaned back in his chair. Could be secondary transfer, family member, someone close to him, someone who handled that scarf and dumped it at the scene. Too neat, Marin replied. Too sudden, too deliberate. Rowan grunted. He knew she was right. Cold cases rarely cracked open so cleanly. They usually required a confession from a dying man or an accident that exposed the truth, not a pristine DNA match from a random teenager. A young officer, barely 25, shifted uncomfortably. Do we know if Lucas is related to anyone from Hollow Ridge? Not yet, but we will. Marin's voice carried the same quiet force that made people listen even when she said nothing. She tapped her finger lightly against the table. We're dealing with someone who held onto this scarf for years, someone who knew exactly when to let it surface. Why now? Hale asked. After 40 years, Marin met his eyes, her expression darkening. Maybe they're tired of hiding, or maybe they want us to chase the wrong person. The room swallowed her words as unease thickened like fog. Outside rain hammered against the windows again, as if mimicking the storm that swallowed Emily the night she vanished. Thunder rolled across the sky in long, low rumbles, shaking the old building's bones. Marin stood. We start with Lucas Harding. Find out who he is, who raised him, who he talks to. Anyone with a link to Hollow Ridge, no matter how small, neighbors, teachers, relatives. Someone touched that scarf recently. Someone who didn't expect forensics to catch up. As the team dispersed, Marin remained in the room alone. She stared at the scarf under the harsh lights, feeling the cold sensation crawl up her spine again. It wasn't the DNA that bothered her. It was the knot. A knot tied so tightly a teenager couldn't have made it by accident. A knot that felt old, practiced, precise. A knot tied by someone who had done this before. She closed the file, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the storm. The drive to Lucas Harding's town took 40 minutes, but the road felt longer under sheets of relentless rain. Streetlights flickered like candle flames pushed to the edge of extinction, sending long shadows stretching across empty pavement. Signs rattled. Trees swayed violently. And through it all, Marin's thoughts churned with relentless speed. Lucas Harding, 19. Quiet, withdrawn, raised by a single father who worked night shifts at the lumber mill. No major incidents. No violent tendencies. Nothing in his history hinted at involvement in something so dark, so calculated, so rooted in another era. But sometimes, innocence is the perfect mask. And sometimes, guilt is inherited, like an unwanted legacy passed from one generation to the next until someone finally breaks the silence. Marin pulled into the Hardings' driveway. The house was small paint peeling, the porch light flashing erratically. She stepped out of her car and instantly felt the cold rain slice across her face, stinging like tiny shards of ice. She knocked firmly on the door. Lucas answered. He looked harmless, messy hair, thin frame, nervous eyes that flickered with unease as soon as he saw her badge. But harmless didn't mean innocent. Lucas Harding, Marin asked. Yes, he replied, barely audible over the rain. I'm Detective Marin Cole. I'd like to ask you some questions. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. About what? She studied his face carefully. Nerves, fear, something else beneath the surface, confusion maybe, or guilt. May I come in? She asked. He hesitated but stepped aside. My dad's at work. It's just me. The interior smelled faintly of damp wood and old carpet. The living room was cluttered with worn furniture, stacks of magazines, and a muted TV playing a rerun of some forgotten sitcom. Lucas sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting. What's going on? He asked. Marin didn't sugarcoat it. Your DNA was found on evidence connected to a missing person cold case from 1981. His eyes widened. What? That's impossible. I wasn't even... He trailed off, panic rising in his voice. Marin watched him closely. Do you have an explanation? No, he shouted, then immediately lowered his voice. No, I don't know anything about that. His reaction felt genuine, too immediate to be rehearsed. But panic can be real, even when guilt is real too. Has anyone in your family ever talked about Hollow Ridge? Lucas shook his head. Never. I don't even know where that is. Has anyone given you old clothing, scarves, items from before you were born? No, we don't have family stuff. He exhaled shakily. Dad doesn't keep anything from the past. Marin took in his trembling hands the way he kept glancing at the window, as if expecting someone to appear. Something about his fear felt displaced, like he was afraid of something else entirely. Something behind her questions, not the questions themselves. She leaned forward. Lucas, when was the last time someone visited your house? Anyone borrowed your things? Anyone been in your room? He hesitated. His eyes darted again toward the hallway this time. There was someone, he whispered. Marin's pulse sharpened. Who? A man. Came by 2 weeks ago. Lucas's voice shook. Said he was looking for my dad. I let him in because he said he used to work with him. But Dad said later he didn't know him. Marin's breath caught. What did he look like? Lucas shifted uneasily. Tall, pale, wore gloves even though it wasn't cold. And he kept looking around like he was measuring the place. A chill threaded down Marin's spine. Did he go into your room? Lucas nodded slowly. He asked to use the bathroom, but I saw him come out of the wrong door. My door. The storm outside roared like a warning. Lucas Marin said carefully. Did he touch anything in your room? Yes. His voice cracked. My laundry basket. I thought it was weird, but I didn't say anything. Marin closed her eyes for a moment, just long enough to grasp the gravity of it. The scarf, the DNA, the sudden match. It wasn't Lucas. Someone planted his DNA. Someone who wanted the case reopened. Someone who wanted attention. Someone who wanted to be chased. A man who wore gloves. A man who moved like a shadow. A man who returned after 40 years. Marin rose to her feet. Lucas, lock your doors. Don't let anyone inside. And if you see that man again, call me immediately. His voice trembled. Detective. Who is he? Marin didn't answer. She stepped into the storm, her mind racing. Some cold cases were never solved because the killer vanished. Others because the killer never left. And this one was waking up. Rain trailed in jagged streams down Marin's windshield as she pulled away from the Harding house, the storm swallowing the road ahead in shifting curtains of darkness. The wipers thrashed desperately, but the world refused to come into focus, as if the night itself tried to shield her from the truth she was inching toward. Every instinct screamed that Lucas Harding was a victim, not a suspect, another pawn placed on a chessboard designed 4 decades ago by a hand that never stopped playing. The man in gloves. The stranger moving through a house without permission, without hesitation. The shadow drifting across generations as if time didn't apply to him. Lightning ripped open the sky, illuminating the empty highway in stark white. For an instant, Marin imagined a figure standing on the roadside motionless, watching her car streak past. But the flash died, and nothing remained but blackness and the relentless beating of the storm. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Someone had planted Lucas's DNA intentionally. Someone who wanted the cold case dragged out of its grave. Someone who needed attention or craved the thrill of being hunted again. 40 years was a long time to stay silent. Too long for guilt. Too long for control. But just the right amount of time for confidence. Predators grow bold when the world forgets their crimes. The precinct was quieter than usual when she returned. Dim lights, humming computers, sleeping the building's night shift skeleton crew scattered across desks like tired ghosts. Marin walked straight to her office, dropped her soaked coat onto the chair, and opened Emily Carter's cold case file. Every page felt heavier now, as if absorbing the weight of new fear. She spread the documents across her desk, the timeline the witness reports, the early forensics notes, the faded map of Hollow Ridge where investigators had circled locations until the ink bled. And in the center of it all, Emily's photograph. 17, smiling. The innocence in her eyes felt cruel now, a reminder of everything stolen and everything unanswered. Marin exhaled slowly and reopened a report she had skimmed years ago, but never examined deeply the list of suspicious sightings reported in the weeks before Emily vanished. Most had been dismissed. A hooded man near the bus stop. A stranger walking through backyards at night. A truck idling near the forest. Small town paranoia, the original detectives had called it. Noise without meaning. But maybe the noise had been a warning. She reached for her pen and circled a detail she had skimmed before. Witness reported man wearing gloves despite warm weather. Gloves. A detail too odd to ignore. Gloves in November might mean nothing. Cold hand circulation issues, but gloves in late October when temperatures were mild. That was different. That was deliberate. That was someone hiding fingerprints. She circled the line again, pressing the pen so hard it nearly tore through the paper. Outside her office, footsteps approached, light hesitant. She looked up as Officer Hale appeared at her door, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the weary expression of someone bracing for news they didn't want to hear. "You're back sooner than I expected," he said softly. "He's not our guy," Marin replied before he even asked. "Lucas," she nodded. "Then who left his DNA on that scarf? The real killer," she said, her voice a low rumble. "And he wanted us to find it." Hale sat across from her, setting one of the coffees on her desk. "We pulled Harding's birth records. No connection to Hollow Ridge. No relatives there. The father moved around a lot when Lucas was a kid, but nothing close to the Carter case. Someone went into the boys' room," Marin said. "Someone who touched his clothes. Someone who walked through that house without fear." Hale frowned deeply. "Then we're looking at someone older. Someone from Emily's time. Someone who's been watching," Marin added, her voice trailing. The thought settled between them like a weight pressing on every breath. Hale shifted uncomfortably. "If he's resurfacing now, he won't stop." "No," Marin said, "he won't." The clock on her wall ticked louder in the silence, its rhythm syncing with her heartbeat, until she felt an urgent pull, an instinct old and sharp telling her she was missing something. She opened a drawer, rummaging through a pile of old property seizure logs from the original investigation. "He took souvenirs," she whispered. Hale blinked. "What? Killer types like this. They take items, tokens, something to relive the crime, something to hold the power." Marin flipped through pages with increasing speed. Emily's backpack was torn open, but nothing of value was stolen. Yet the report mentions her bracelet was missing. "The silver one?" Hale asked. "Yes." Marin's eyes locked onto the line. Her best friend reported she wore it every day, but it was never found. "You think he still has it?" She looked up, eyes sharp as glass. "Souvenirs don't get thrown away. They get cherished, hidden, protected." Hale swallowed. "If he kept it all these years." "He's still living here," Marin said. "In some form. Somewhere close. Close enough to walk into a stranger's home and plant DNA without fear." Hale leaned forward. "You think he's local?" "I think he never left." Thunder cracked again. The building seemed to tremble with it. A knock broke through the tension. Rowan stepped in, his expression grim. "We pulled older records from the region. There was another incident 10 months before Emily's disappearance. Different town. Different victim. Another teenage girl." Marin froze. "Why isn't that in the case file?" "Because it wasn't labeled as a crime," Rowan replied. "It was written off as a runaway. But listen to this. She was last seen walking home after a late shift at a diner. Just like Emily." Hale stiffened. "Same pattern. Same region," Rowan added. "Same type of victim," Marin whispered. Rowan placed an old brittle report on her desk. She was never found, and the family moved out of state within weeks. Marin scanned the document, her jaw tightening. Patterns don't lie. Predators don't change methods, not without reason. If there had been another girl, another disappearance, then Emily wasn't the first. She was the first discovered. Her pulse hammered. "We need to find everything about this earlier case. Every scrap. Every detail." "I'm already on it," Rowan said. "But there's something else." He hesitated. For Rowan, hesitation was rare enough to be alarming. "What is it?" Marin asked. "The father of the missing girl from the earlier case filed a strange complaint 2 years after she vanished. Said someone was leaving items on his porch. First a hair ribbon, then a note with no handwriting, just cut-out letters from magazines. The officer in charge dismissed it as harassment." "What kind of items?" Marin pressed. Rowan flipped the page. The ribbon belonged to his daughter, the same one she was wearing the night she disappeared. Hale muttered, "Trophies." He was taunting them. Marin closed her eyes briefly, and when the family moved, he just found someone new. Her thoughts raced with terrifying clarity. He doesn't kill for impulse, she murmured. He kills for ritual, for memory, for ownership. Hale whispered, then why stop for 40 years? Marin opened her eyes, and there was a darkness in them she hadn't felt in years. Who says he stopped? Lightning cracked again, lighting the office in a flash of white. In that moment, Marin noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small sticky note attached to the corner of the cold case map. Its edges curled with age, but not part of the original file. She reached for it slowly. Hale leaned in. What is it? Marin peeled the note from the map. 6 words, old glue, old paper. But the ink, fresh, too fresh. She read the message aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. You're looking in the wrong place. Rowan froze. Hale's face drained of color. The building suddenly felt colder, as if the killer's breath still lingered on the air. Marin stared at the note, her pulse pounding harder than the storm outside. He had been here, in this office, in this room, close enough to know where she would look, close enough to touch her map, close enough to watch. The cold case wasn't just open, it was alive, and now so was he. The note trembled between Marin's fingers, though the room itself was still. 6 words written with careful pressure ink that gleamed softly under the flickering fluorescent light. You're looking in the wrong place. It wasn't a taunt. It was an invitation, a warning, a message left inches from a 40-year-old map pinned to her wall. He had been close enough to breathe her air, close enough to see the documents on her desk, close enough to know exactly when to slip a message into the investigation. Lock the building, Marin said, her voice low, controlled. Now. Rowan moved first, storming toward the hallway. Hale followed, radio crackling as he barked commands to the night shift staff. Marin stood still for a moment longer, eyes fixed on the note as if it might shift under her gaze. The killer walked through this precinct. Through security, past officers, past cameras. Unless, her stomach tightened, unless he worked here before, or still knew the blind spots better than anyone else. She grabbed her coat and hurried out into the corridor. The precinct erupted into motion, doors slamming, officers sweeping each office, lights flicking on one by one. The storm outside pounded against the windows, rattling the old frames, echoing through the hall like distant footsteps. Marin watched the chaos unfold, her heartbeat sinking with the thunder overhead. Hale returned first, breathing hard. No sign of forced entry. Cameras show nothing. Rowan followed, jaw clenched. We swept the entire building. Whoever left that note isn't here now. Or, Marin murmured, never needed to break in. Silence fell. Heavy. Unspoken implications rippling through the air. Detective Rowan said carefully, Are you suggesting he's someone on the inside? She didn't answer. Not because she doubted him, because she didn't want to say the possibility out loud. The thought slithered into her mind anyway. If the killer had walked these halls before, if he had been part of this place during Emily Carter's disappearance, then the cold case wasn't cold because evidence was lacking. It was cold because someone buried it from the inside. And that meant Emily never stood a chance. Marin steadied her breathing and turned toward the evidence room. We need to recheck everything, she said. Every box, every piece of evidence, every log of who accessed what and when. If he touched the map, he might have touched something else. Hale nodded, already dialing for backup. Rowan frowned. What if he's watching us right now? What if this is exactly what he wants? Marin met his eyes. Then let him watch. We're done playing blind. The storm howled louder as they descended the stairs to the evidence floor. The overhead lights flickered, buzzing with age. Inside the room, rows of shelves towered like silent sentinels, each marked with numbers and dates that spanned decades. Cold cases lived here, dead voices, unanswered questions, and the final remnants of tragedies time failed to erase. Marin walked toward the section labeled 1981. Her hand hovered over Emily Carter's box. She wasn't afraid of what she might find. She was afraid of what she might not. The lid lifted with a soft scrape. Inside lay the relics of a disappearance. The torn notebook, the crushed hair clip photos of the forest behind the diner, the scrawled statements from witnesses whose memories had long since blurred. And next to them, the original envelope holding the orange scarf. But something was wrong. The envelope was sealed, taped shut, fresh tape, Too clean, too new. This wasn't like this earlier, Marin whispered. Hale leaned in. What do you mean? It was folded, she said. Not sealed. I've opened it a dozen times over the years. Rowan exhaled sharply. He touched this too. No one moved. We need gloves, Hale said quietly. Marin shook her head. No, look. Her finger pointed to a small indentation on the tape, barely visible but unmistakable. A fingerprint smear. Too smooth to be fresh, too recent to be 40 years old. He touched the envelope when he resealed it. He wanted her to find it. Marin felt the walls closing and the storm outside sinking with the storm inside her chest. He's taunting us, and he was confident enough to leave prints because he knows we won't find a match. He's either never been in the system, or he was Rowan finished and someone wiped it. The thought sent a cold shiver crawling up her spine. Hale stepped back. Detective, there's something else. Marin turned and Hale pointed to the floor near the far shelf. A wet footprint. Just one. Just inside the doorway, as if someone stood there silently watching, then vanished again. Marin approached it slowly. The shape was narrow, long, made by a boot with a distinctive tread, old, worn, almost vintage. The kind you wouldn't find in stores anymore. It's recent, Hale said, kneeling to look. Water hasn't dried yet. Marin's throat tightened. He had been here minutes ago, watching them, listening, close enough to know where she would go next. She moved away from the print pulse, quickening. We need every officer checking exits, stairwells, janitor closets, electrical rooms. He knows this building. He's not afraid to slip past us. Rowan grabbed his radio. Orders crackled through the channels instantly. But Marin remained still. Something nagged her. Why leave one footprint? Why not wipe it? Why be seen at all? Why risk stepping in water on purpose? Unless the print wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Marin's breath caught. He wants us to know he's close. Hale looked at her. Why? Why expose himself like that? Because he's not afraid anymore, she whispered. Because he's done waiting. The storm roared again. A door slammed somewhere down the hall. Officers shouted. Marin spun toward the sound just as an officer sprinted into view. Detective West's stairwell movement on the 3rd floor. Rowan bolted. Hale followed. Marin ran with them, her boots slamming against the tile, adrenaline flooding her veins. The hall stretched endlessly, lights flickering overhead in rapid pulses. Her lungs burned. Her heartbeat thundered. They reached the stairwell and pushed through the heavy metal door. The echo hit first, a faint rhythmic creaking from somewhere above. A slow, taunting sound like someone intentionally dragging their hand along the railing. Marin stepped forward, gun raised. 3rd floor, the officer behind her whispered. The stairwell narrowed. Shadows layered the corners like tar. The creaking continued steady, mocking pulling them upward. 1 step, 2, 3. On the landing between floors, something glinted on the ground. A silver object. Hale froze. Detective, is that? Marin knelt. Her breath hitched. A bracelet. Silver. Engraved. Emily's initials. Her throat closed. He was here, Rowan said, voice tight. No, Marin whispered. He is here. Above them, a soft click echoed through the stairwell. Not a door. Not a footstep. A camera. Someone was taking pictures. Marin snapped her head up, but a flash of movement darted beyond the next landing, a blur of black. A silhouette gliding up the stairs with unnatural calm. Not running. Not panicking. Just watching. He moved with the ease of someone who had walked these stairs 1,000 times. Go, Marin shouted. They surged upward, boots pounding, guns drawn. But the 3rd floor landing was empty. No doors ajar, no footsteps, no breath. Just silence clinging to the air like a trap. Rowan kicked open the maintenance door. Empty. Hale searched the bathroom. Empty. Another officer checked the elevator. Empty. But Marin didn't move. She stood perfectly still, listening, breathing slowly, letting the building speak. The storm outside, the humming lights, the faint creak of old metal cooling, and then a whisper of movement behind them. She turned sharply, the footprint on the landing below. No longer 1, now 2. Not fresh, older, impossible. The second print wasn't new. It had always been there, faded, buried beneath dust, invisible until the first had drawn attention to the floor. 2 prints, 2 eras, 40 years apart. One from tonight, one from the past. The killer hadn't just been here. He had been here before. Marin Hale murmured, horror dawning on his face. He's been inside this building for decades. Lightning split the sky. The stairwell lights flickered violently, and somewhere above them the faint, mocking creak echoed once more. The killer was still inside, hiding in the one place no one ever thought to look, the place he had always belonged. The creak faded into the dark like a breath swallowed by the building's bones. Marin stared up the stairwell, her pulse thundering in her ears, her mind racing through every possibility and every nightmare at once. The man they were hunting had walked these halls long before any of them wore a badge. The faded footprint on the lower landing confirmed it. The killer once stood in this very stairwell during the original investigation, watching the same officers who failed to find him. Watching history repeat itself. She gripped the cold railing, feeling its tremble as the storm outside slammed against the walls. "We need to search every floor," she said, her voice low tight. "Every storage room, every locked cabinet, every duct, every crawl space." "He's not hiding in a crawl space for 40 years, Rowan muttered. "He's not," Marin replied. "But he knows them. He knows where he can disappear for minutes at a time. He knows how to slip between places without being seen. He's rehearsed this." The stairwell crackled with tension as officers spread out. Boots thundered down the steps and up the next flight. Radios buzzed with overlapping messages. East wing clear. No movement on second. Basement secured. But in a building this old, silence wasn't reassuring, it was suspicious. Marin took the bracelet in her hand. Emily's bracelet cold against her palm. How had he placed it so perfectly on the landing? How had he moved so quietly between floors? How had he known they would chase him here? "He's orchestrating this," she whispered to herself, "like he's staging a show." Hale returned to her side. No sign of him. Cameras still show nothing. "So either he knows how to avoid them," Marin said, "or someone disabled them." Hale cursed under his breath. "We need tech to check the feeds." "No," Marin said sharply. "We need to check the department roster." He blinked. "You think he worked here?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The faded footprint did the speaking for her. They headed down the stairs past the fresh print and the older one, the two ghosts of his presence. Marin paused, crouched, and touched the faded outline gently. Dust lifted under her glove. "He was here," she murmured, "during the original search. When they questioned witnesses. When they were building leads. He walked these stairs and listened to what the police believed." Rowan returned from the upper floors breathless. If he was here back then, he could have been maintenance, janitorial staff, a civilian volunteer, a dispatcher, anyone who could move around without suspicion. Or Marin said someone who worked the case. That thought hung in the air like the scent of smoke. Rowan's expression hardened. "You're talking about a cop." "A cop," Hale echoed, voice cracking. Marin kept her voice steady. "Someone with access. Someone who knew procedures. Someone who could steer the investigation away from himself." Lightning exploded outside, flooding the stairwell with violent white light. For a second, the shadows danced in a way that made all three of them turn. But nothing waited there. Just emptiness and the echo of the storm. "We need to pull personnel files from 1981, Marin ordered. "Everyone who worked the case. Every cop who entered this building during the investigation." Hale nodded and ran, but Rowan didn't move. He stared at the faded footprint, jaw rigid. If it's a cop, that means he still has a badge, or he had one once. That means he was trained. That means he knew how to bury the evidence. "And it means he's aging," Marin added softly. "Not old enough to be immobile. Old enough to be experienced. Old enough to have watched the story fade." Rowan rubbed his face. "You said earlier someone wiped his prints. If he was police, he could have done it himself." "Exactly." Before Rowan could respond, a sudden blast of static shattered the air. Hale's voice crackled through Marin's radio, urgently strained. "Detective, we've got something in archives." Marin grabbed the radio. "What is it?" "You need to see it yourself," Hale replied. "Now." She and Rowan exchanged a look before sprinting down the stairs. The archives room was 3 floors below a labyrinth of records, case files, microfilm, and dusty cabinets stretching so far back they predated most of the officers working now. When Marin pushed open the heavy door, she expected chaos. Instead, the room was eerily, unnaturally still. Hale stood near the back, pointing at a row of metal filing cabinets that had been pulled slightly out of line, just enough to reveal what was behind them. Marin approached slowly. There, hidden behind the altered row, was a small alcove, a space no one would notice unless they knew exactly where to look. The cabinet had been placed deliberately like a curtain shielding a secret, and tucked neatly inside that narrow space were objects wrapped in old cloth. Souvenirs. Her breath caught as she knelt and pulled the first bundle into the light. She unfolded it slowly, heart hammering. A hair ribbon, pink, faded. The same description from the earlier missing girls report. Hale whispered, "Oh my God." Rowan crouched beside her as she unwrapped the second item. Emily Carter's silver necklace. The one her parents swore she wore the night she vanished. The one they never found. Marin's hands shook. She reached for the third item. A photograph, not of Emily, but of the earlier missing girl. Her smile frozen in time, printed on glossy paper that had yellowed around the edges, and on the back scrawled in sharp, uneven handwriting. She listened. Rowan swore violently. He collected them. He kept them here, in this building. And he visited them, Marin said, for 40 years. Hale took a shaky step backward. This isn't just a killer. He's ritualistic, organized. And he's here. He's been here. Marin lifted the final object from the alcove, a small notebook bound with a leather strap. She opened it carefully. Inside were pages filled with dates, times, initials, locations, notes scribbled with meticulous precision. Victims' plans, observations. Her stomach flipped when she saw the most recent entry. 10:21 p.m. hallway, map. 10:28 p.m. stairs, bracelet. 10:31 p.m. archives, gifts. 10:33 p.m. watch. 10:34 p.m. leave. The ink was fresh, minutes old. Rowan inhaled sharply. He documented everything he just did. Hale whispered, "It's like he's choreographing us." Marin flipped to a page halfway through the notebook. A list of initials. ECMRSPAC. Emily Carter, the earlier missing girl, and 2 initials Marin didn't recognize. Not yet. She turned the page. A rough sketch of the precinct, dotted with circles and arrows, escape routes, blind spots, camera angles. Every weakness mapped with chilling accuracy. "We're not chasing him," Marin said. "We're following a script he wrote." Rowan clenched his fists. "So how do we stop someone who's always one step ahead?" Marin stared at the notebook. The killer had visited his trophies, left new ones, left notes, left prints, left a show for them to follow. "He's not ahead," she said slowly. "Not anymore." Rowan frowned. "What are you talking about?" "He's aging," Marin said. "His reflexes are slowing. He's still careful, but he's sloppy enough to leave a footprint. He's bold, but he's revealing himself more. He wants the chase, but he's also losing control." Hale's voice trembled. "So he wants an ending?" Marin nodded. "He wants to be seen, and when killers like him want to be seen," she closed the notebook with a decisive snap, "they go back to the place that matters most." Rowan stiffened. "Where the forest?" Marin shook her head. "No, somewhere older." Thunder boomed, shaking the floor. "The diner," she whispered, "where Emily was last seen." Hale's eyes widened. "You think he's there right now?" Marin turned, eyes burning with purpose. "I think he never stopped going there. The storm had not eased. It had only sharpened." Rain slashed sideways across the windshield as Marin drove toward the old diner on Ridgeway Road. The last place Emily Carter was ever seen alive. Wind claws scraped at the car's frame like a warning. The headlights carved through sheets of water that seemed determined to erase the world beyond the glass. The entire night felt engineered, staged, like the killer himself had conjured it to match the night from 4 decades earlier. Marin's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. She kept replaying the notebook's last entry leave as if the killer had granted them permission to discover his breadcrumb trail. But one line in particular drilled into her thoughts like a whisper from the dark watch. Was he watching them now? Watching her, watching Hollow Ridge as his story resurfaced? The diner emerged through the storm like a ghost, its neon sign flickering feebly, casting a sickly red glow on wet pavement. The same sign Emily walked beneath the night she vanished. The same hum of buzzing electricity, the same hum of inevitability. Marin parked beneath the awning and stepped out. Rain pounded her hood, soaking through fabric, chilling her skin instantly. The storm carried a memory she did not live but could feel. A night swallowed by wind, a girl swallowed by shadows, a crime swallowed by time. Her boots splashed through puddles as she approached the door. She paused, listening. A faint hum vibrated from inside. Lights on. Someone there. She pushed the door slowly. A bell above it chimed soft, delicate, out of place in the heavy, trembling air. The diner smelled of old, grease-stale coffee and the faint trace of cleaning solution. It was mostly unchanged from the original crime scene photos she'd studied a dozen times. Red vinyl booths cracked from age-laminated menus curling at the edges. Napkin dispensers shining under dim overhead bulbs. But the most important detail was at the far corner booth. A mug sat steaming, fresh, not minutes old, seconds. Marin's breath tightened. Someone had been here moments ago. Or still was. She approached the mug cautiously. Steam curled in thin white ribbons. Black coffee. No sugar. No cream. The kind of drink chosen by someone who liked things bitter. Plain. Controlled. Her eyes drifted to the window beside the booth. Through fogged glass, she saw her reflection blurred, distorted, and behind her reflection, in the storm-soaked darkness, another faint shape. As if someone had stood there, watching from outside, watching her enter. A flash of lightning lit up the street. The reflection vanished. Marin forced her pulse to slow and scanned the diner again. On the table next to the steaming mug sat a laminated guest check. Blank, untouched, except for one thing. A single word written in black ink. Soon. Her chest tightened. A message. Not for the staff. Not for a customer. For her. The killer knew she would come here. He had already been here. Maybe he still was. The bell above the entrance chimed softly again, not from the door, but from the faint pressure change as wind pushed against it. Marin spun toward the kitchen. Something creaked inside. She moved slowly, gun-raised heartbeat pounding so loudly it felt like part of the storm. The kitchen door swung back and forth in the draft, its hinges groaning. Stainless steel counters gleamed under harsh lights. The smell of fryer oil clung to the air like an old stain. A shadow shifted behind a tall shelf. Marin took a step forward. Come out. Silence answered her. She moved closer, boots slipping slightly on the wet tile. Her breath fogged in the cold air, the kitchen strangely frigid despite the heat lamps overhead. She turned the corner of the shelf. Nothing. Empty space. Her chest tightened. Had she imagined it? No. The notebook. The bracelet. The footprint. He was here. He was always one step ahead. She scanned the room again, and then she saw it. A door partially open, leading to the back alley. Wind howled as rain blasted through the narrow gap. He had just slipped out. Marin pushed the door open and stepped into the alley. Water ran down the brick walls in rapid streams. The dumpster overflowed with soaked cardboard. The entire place reeked of wet trash and gasoline. But something else lingered beneath the scents, an unnerving whiff of cologne. Sharp, bitter, old-fashioned. She followed the alley to the street, scanning every shadow, every corner, every glint of movement. But the storm swallowed sound and shape alike. He could be anywhere, or nowhere, or watching her from inches away. Marin's radio crackled suddenly, making her jump. "Detective Cole, come in," Hale's voice shouted over background noise. She lifted the radio. "I'm here. Marin, you need to get it back to the precinct, now." Her pulse tightened. Why, what happened? There was a pause, a heavy, suffocating pause, before Hale answered. "You need to see it for yourself." The line cut. Marin ran back to their car, rain slamming against her as she sped toward the precinct headlights slicing through the violent storm. The building appeared through the darkness like a fortress battered by wind, its windows glowing faintly like tired eyes. When she burst through the doors, Hale and Rowan were waiting. Hale's expression was grim. Rowan's jaw was set stiff, fury and fear etched into every line. "What happened?" she demanded. Hale swallowed. "He left something." "Where?" Rowan stepped forward. "Your office." Her stomach plummeted. She pushed past them, heart-hammering dread crawling like ice up her spine. The hallway stretched ahead of her, doors on either side, closed lights flickering. She reached her office door slightly ajar. She hadn't left it that way. A faint buzzing sounded from inside. Marin pushed the door open and froze. Her office was untouched, desk intact, map still pinned to the wall, papers undisturbed. Except for what sat in the center of her chair, a small cassette tape recorder, covered in droplets of rain, still buzzing faintly, still recording, a red light blinking. Her breath caught. Slowly, she reached toward the recorder and pressed. Stop. The tape clicked. Rowan stepped behind her. Careful. Could be evidence. Hale added, could be a threat. Marin pressed play. Static hissed at first. Low, murmuring. Then footsteps. Slow ones. Deliberate. Someone walking across her office floor. A faint creak of a chair. Breathing steady calm too close to the microphone. And then a voice. Low, measured. Gravel soft as dust. Detective Cole. Marin felt the blood drain from her face. I've waited a long time for someone like you. The voice paused. A faint exhale. You're looking for the girl. Static crackled. But you're following the wrong one. Rowan's eyes widened. Hale inhaled sharply. Another breath from the tape. Closer this time, intimate, almost gentle. She was never the only one. Silence. A long, suffocating silence. Then a final whisper softer than the rain. Find the others, before I do. The tape clicked off. The room fell still. Not a sound, not a breath. Just the storm pounding outside like a warning heartbeat. Rowan finally spoke, voice rough. What others? Marin stared at the recorder, her reflection warped in its black plastic surface. Emily Carter wasn't the first. She wasn't the last. And somewhere out there in the storm, the killer was hunting again. The tape recorder felt heavier in Marin's hand than its size should allow, as if the voice captured inside it seeped through the plastic and clung to her skin. She stared at it, unable to shake the feeling that the killer's breath was still inside the room, still brushing the back of her neck, still watching her reaction from some unseen vantage point. Find the others, before I do. Not a threat, a promise, a challenge, a countdown she didn't know had already started. Rain hammered against the windows like frantic fists. The storm outside raged harder than before, wind shrieking around the edges of the building. Rowan shut the door to lessen the noise, but the storm still seeped through the walls, vibrating the glass and humming in the fluorescent lights overhead. Hale broke the silence first. He came here, alone, in the middle of a lockdown, through security, past every camera, and he sat in your chair. Marin didn't look at him. Her eyes remained locked on the recorder. And he had time, she said. Time to sit. Time to breathe into this microphone. Time to know we wouldn't return fast enough to catch him. Rowan folded his arms tightly. We're dealing with someone who rehearsed this for decades. No, Marin said quietly. Someone who never stopped. She placed the recorder on her desk as gently as if it were a still beating heart. Her map caught her eye again, the pins, the circles, the notes scribbled from earlier parts of the investigation. Emily Carter's disappearance was the center of it all. But now the map felt incomplete, hollow, as if the frame had been widened, and the picture was larger than she ever imagined. Find the others, Hale whispered under his breath. What the hell does that mean? Marin moved to the map, pulling a marker from her pocket. Her hand hovered above the forest trail where Emily was last seen, then drifted toward the diner, then toward the location where the earlier missing girl disappeared. 2 girls 10 months apart. The earlier case dismissed as a runaway. Emily's filed as an abduction, and the killer had left trophies from both in the archives. He's telling us there are more, Marin said. Victims we haven't discovered. Cases overlooked. Families who never realized they lost their daughters to the same man. Rowan rubbed his temples. Jesus, how many? As many as we missed, Marin replied. She capped the marker and let it fall to the desk. Her fingers trembled not with fear, but with a raw, consuming fury. The killer didn't just hide the truth. He curated it. He collected it. He fed on the silence. And now, after 40 years, he wanted the story to breathe again. Hale picked up the recorder with a cloth. We'll get the voice analyzed. Cadence, tone, age. It won't help, Marin said. He disguised it. The pitch isn't natural. The pace is controlled. It's rehearsed. Rowan nodded reluctantly. So what do we have? Marin turned toward them slowly. We have his message, and we have his pattern. Rain cracked against the windows again, louder this time, like the sky itself was warning them that time was running out. An hour later, the task force gathered in the main conference room. Maps covered the walls. Old case files lined the table. Digital screens glowed with archived photos, missing person posters, and timelines from the last 4 decades. Officers read silently, brows furrowed the storm reflecting in their tense expressions. Marin stood at the front, her voice steady despite the storm swirling inside her. The killer indicated multiple victims. We know 2, Emily Carter and the earlier girl. We will identify the rest by cross-referencing patterns, dates, geographic behavior, and victim profiles. A young officer raised her hand. Should we look at deaths too? Not just disappearances. The killer might not have kept all the bodies hidden. Yes, Marin said. Anything between 1979 and 1985 in a 50-mile radius. Sudden disappearances, unexplained deaths, unidentified remains. Rowan stepped beside her. He's organized. Methodical? He targets young women walking alone at night, usually after work. Diner shifts, grocery clerks, waitresses, victims with consistent routines. Marin added, and he stalks them, watches them, studies them. A second officer frowned. Why stop in the 80s? Marin met his gaze. He didn't. The room stiffened. We know he kept Emily's necklace. We know he kept trophies from the earlier girl. He hid those items inside this building. He visited them. He records his movements in a journal. That's not the behavior of someone who stopped. That's someone who stayed dormant. Someone who waited. Rowan crossed his arms. So what woke him up now? Marin didn't answer immediately. The truth was forming in her mind, unsettling and cold. Maybe he planned to resurface, she said. Or maybe something forced him to. Hale's voice came through from behind the group. Or someone. Everyone turned. Hale stepped forward, holding a thin folder. I pulled files of every officer and staff member who was here during the 1981 investigation. And Marin asked. There are anomalies, Hale said. Several officers transferred out immediately after the cold case stalled. 2 retired early. 1 died in an accident. But one name appears in both timelines of the 2 disappearances. He placed the folder in front of Marin. For a moment, her breath paused. The folder bore a name she hadn't expected to see. She didn't open it yet. She didn't need to. The weight of the name alone shifted the air in the room. We investigate this discreetly, she said. Rowan's eyes darkened. You think one of our own is involved? I think someone with access. Someone familiar with this building. Someone who knew the original investigation inside out. Someone who could manipulate the system. Had to be. Lightning flashed violently across the sky. The lights in the conference room flickered. For a second, everything went dark. A loud crack of thunder shook the walls. Then the lights returned. But something in the room had changed. Gasps echoed. Marin slowly turned. On the far wall, pinned beside Emily's photo, hung a page that hadn't been there before. A page torn from the killer's notebook. Fresh ink, fresh tape, fresh intrusion. A message written in the same sharp, uneven handwriting. You're closer than you think. Rowan swore under his breath. Officers rushed to check exits. Hale ran for the stairwell. But Marin remained still, eyes locked on the note, breath steadying as adrenaline sharpened her thoughts. He was inside the building again, and they had been too distracted to notice. She tore the note off the wall. Beneath it was something else, something smaller. A photograph, blurry, taken through glass, of Marin, sitting in her office earlier that night. She stared at her own reflection captured by the killer. He wasn't just watching the investigation. He was watching her. She crushed the photo in her hand and turned toward the room. No more chasing shadows, she said. We hunt him. Now. But before she could say more, Hale burst back into the room, breathless rain dripping from his jacket. Detective, there's something outside. You need to see this. Marin followed him through the hallway and out the front doors. The storm hit her like a wall of ice. Wind roared, rain stung, but the sight waiting at the curb cut through everything. A figure stood under a street lamp, tall, still, umbrella held low to shield their face. Not moving, not speaking, just waiting. Lightning flashed. In that split glimpse of white brilliance, Marin saw the edge of a glove, a dark coat, boots with the same vintage tread, And then the figure stepped back. The light flickered, and the storm swallowed him whole, leaving behind only a single object lying on the wet pavement. Marin approached it slowly. A photograph. Not Emily, not the earlier girl. A new girl, someone Marin had never seen. Written below the image, smeared slightly by rain. Tomorrow. Her heart stopped. A new victim. Not missing yet. Not dead yet. Still out there. Still alive. For now. The storm thundered overhead. Time was no longer on their side. It belonged to him. Rain cascaded down the street lamp like a shimmering veil as Marin stared at the photograph in her hand, its edges buckling beneath the relentless storm. The girl in the picture couldn't have been older than 17. Dark hair pulled into a loose braid, a faint smile. Eyes wide, unaware that someone was already watching her from behind the lens. Someone who stood only feet from her. Someone who followed her. Someone who intended for Marin to see her face before the world lost her too. Tomorrow, the killer had written. A deadline, a countdown, a promise dripping with cruelty. Rowan arrived at her side, breathing hard. Hale joined seconds later, his boots splashing through the pooling water. Rowan saw the photograph and froze. Jesus, who is she? I don't know, Marin replied, her voice cutting through the storm. But he does. Is there anything on the back? Hale asked. Marin turned it over. Blank. No message, no name, no location. Just the faint imprint of a fingerprint smeared by the rain, tauntingly close to useful but already dissolving into nothing. He wants us to find her, she said, but not too fast. He's enjoying this, Rowan muttered darkly. He likes the power. No, Marin whispered. He likes the ritual. Thunder cracked overhead, illuminating the empty street where the killer once stood. The space looked normal now. Just wet pavement, trembling shadows, the metallic scent of rain. But the air still felt charged, as if his presence lingered, watching from the dark edges of Hollow Ridge. We need to get back inside, Marin said. We don't have much time. Inside the precinct, the storm's fury became a muffled roar against old walls. Officers gathered around the photograph as Marin placed it under a desk lamp. The girl's image stared back at them, confident, hopeful, unaware she had been marked. Hale zoomed in with a magnifier. The background looks like a storefront window. Maybe downtown, could be the mall. Could be anywhere. Marin narrowed her eyes. Reflections. Look for reflections. He adjusted the angle. Behind the girl, faint and blurred by motion, were colors blue, red, white painted across glass. Rowan leaned in. That looks like the Ridgeway ice cream parlor. The mural on the front window. Marin straightened. She's local. If we can ID her, Hale said, we might have a chance. Marin walked to the intercom, pressed the button, and her voice echoed through the precinct. I need the latest missing person updates, school rosters, shifts from local diners, every teenager living within 5 miles of Ridgeway Road. And I need them now. Officers scattered like released tension. Rowan rubbed his jaw. He's accelerating. Why now? He's aging, Marin replied. He doesn't have decades left. He wants his story finished. He wants a finale, Hale added bitterly. No, Marin corrected, he wants an audience. Lightning flashed, illuminating the files spread across the conference table. Marin scanned them, her eyes darting through old reports. New reports, connections that weren't there before, but now glowed like threads in the dark. 2 victims from the past, 1 potential victim for tomorrow. Patterns always evolve, but killers stay consistent. He stalked them first, photographed them, collected something personal, then waited hours, days, sometimes weeks before striking. The photograph in Marin's hand meant he had already chosen this girl. He had already studied her. Tomorrow wasn't an estimate. It was the day. Hale's radio crackled. Detective Cole, we might have an ID. Go, she said sharply. Hale put a finger to his earpiece. Copy, send it to my screen. A file popped up on the conference monitor. Marin's chest tightened. Lily Harper, age 17. Works part-time at Ridgeway Ice Cream Parlor. Lives on Pinebrook Lane with her mother. Her shift ended at 9 p.m. Marin glanced at the wall clock. 8:12 p.m. He was moving faster than she estimated. We need to go, Marin said, snatching her coat. Now? Rowan grabbed his weapon. Hale followed. Officers scrambled into patrol cars. Engines roared to life. Sirens split the storm as they tore through the streets of Hollow Ridge. The ice cream parlor glowed faintly through the rain, its pastel lights flickering like dying embers. Marin's car screeched to a stop. She jumped out, boots splashing, eyes scanning every shadow. The shop door was unlocked. She pushed it open. A single scoop of melting ice cream sat on the counter. A wallet lay beside it. Keys. A phone still glowing with an unread message. Lily, Marin shouted. No answer. The back door was ajar, wind pushing it back and forth in that familiar, taunting rhythm the killer favored so much. Hale moved in. Detective footprints. Marin crouched beside the trail in the wet floor. 2 sets. One small, one larger. The larger prints matched the vintage tread from the precinct stairwell. He took her! Rowan muttered, fury shaking his voice. No, Marin whispered. She's still alive. He wants her alive until tomorrow. The back door slammed against the wall as the wind intensified. Marin moved through it into the alley. Rain stung her eyes. The alley was long, narrow, empty, except for a small white object floating in a puddle. She reached for it, a Polaroid of Lily, inside the shop. Someone had taken the picture seconds after they arrived. Someone who had been watching the entire time. God damn it, Rowan growled. He's playing us. He knows every move we make. He's testing us, Marin said softly. Hale stared at the Polaroid. Where would he take her? Marin's mind raced. The killer always returned to places that mattered, places tied to memory, places imprinted with his ritual. The diner, the archives, the stairwell, the forest behind the diner. But not just those. Earlier in the night, something in the notebook stood out. A pattern she hadn't fully grasped until now. She grabbed her phone, flipping through the captured images of the notebook entries. One sequence repeated every few pages. Trail Ridge Overlook. The words pulsed in her memory. He's taking her to the Overlook, she said. Rowan stiffened. The old Ridgeway Overlook. That place is deserted. It's where he watched the police search for Emily, Marin said. Where he watched the town panic. Where he watched everything unfold. It's his vantage point, his sanctuary. And his stage, Hale added. Marin nodded once. We move. The convoy sped toward the Overlook, tires hissing against the soaked asphalt. The storm thrashed the treetops violently as they climbed the winding road. Each hairpin turn felt tighter, darker, swallowed by shadows that twisted unnaturally under the flashing lightning. When they reached the top, the Overlook stretched out like a broken balcony overlooking a sea of trees. The guardrail was rusted. The viewing platform creaked under the weight of the wind. The entire ridge felt haunted, frozen in the same eerie stillness as the night Emily disappeared. Marin stepped out. Wind whipped her coat. Rain stung her skin. Thunder vibrated the ground. Rowan swept the left side. Hale moved right. Officers secured the perimeter. Marin approached the viewing platform. And then she saw it. A single umbrella leaned against the rail. Black, closed. As if someone had just set it down. Something else lay next to it. A small locket, its chain tangled. Marin knew it before she touched it. Emily Carter's locket. The killer was marking the place. Waiting for them. Hale shouted from the tree line. Tracks, fresh ones. Marin ran towards his voice, heart pounding as she followed him into the woods. The trees closed around them like a living maze. Flashlights cut through the darkness, beams shaking with each breath. A scream pierced the storm. High, close, desperate. Lily, Marin shouted. They sprinted towards the sound. Branches whipped their faces. Mud clung to their boots. The storm roared so loudly it nearly drowned out the second scream. Nearly. They burst into a clearing. Empty. Silent. Except for a small rain-soaked note pinned to a tree trunk with a rusty nail. Marin yanked it free. 4 words. Written in the same sharp, familiar hand. You're too late tonight. Her vision blurred with fury. Rowan kicked a fallen branch. Hale cursed violently. Marin looked deeper into the trees. The darkness stared back. He was somewhere nearby, holding Lily, waiting for tomorrow, for his finale, for his ending. For her! Marin crushed the note in her fist. Tomorrow wasn't a deadline. It was a challenge, and he had no idea how ready she was to end this. Wind roared through the trees like an ancient scream as Marin stared into the clearing where Lily Harper should have been. Her flashlight beam carved lines through the rain, slicing across empty space as if trying to reveal the truth that refused to be seen. The storm drenched the forest floor, washing away footprints, smearing mud, erasing evidence as fast as she could look for it. The killer didn't need to hide his tracks. The storm was doing it for him. He was just here, Hale said, breathless, his voice cracking with frustration. Seconds, maybe less. Rowan scanned the tree line, jaw clenched so tight it trembled. He's using the storm like a shield, like he did 40 years ago. No, Marin said, her voice barely above the storm's howl. This is different. She held the note he left. You're too late tonight. Ink bleeding from the rain, but the message remained sharp, precise, controlled. A warning, but also a reminder. Everything was on his terms. The timing, the location, the message, the ritual. Let's sweep another 200 yards, Rowan said. He can't be far. He doesn't have to be far, Marin replied. He just has to be hidden. They fanned out through the woods, flashlights, shaking boots sinking into the drenched ground. Branches snapped underfoot. Wind churned the canopy overhead. Every shadow looked alive. Every tree looked like it held a secret. Marin moved deeper into the forest, deeper into the storm, deeper into the place where the killer felt most at home. Her radio crackled. Detective Cole, this is base. We're pulling additional teams toward the ridge. Roads are flooding. We need to reroute to the west entrance. Do it, Marin said. Keep everyone away from the overlook. He's been here. He could still be close. As she moved forward, a flicker of movement caught her eye, just a thin shift of darkness between two trees. She froze, breath held, heart thundering. The shape vanished as quickly as it appeared, blending back into the forest like smoke. Rowan, she whispered. 2 o'clock from my position. Possible visual. On my way, his voice replied instantly. She approached the spot slowly, gun raised, flashlight steady. Nothing. No movement. No sound except the relentless rain. Then something soft beneath her boot. She stepped back and shined her light downward. A single glove. Black leather. Old. Familiar. Her pulse spiked. She crouched and lifted it with gloved fingertips. The interior was cold. Damp. Recently dropped. It was the same type worn by the figure under the street lamp. He dropped this, she said into her radio. He wants us to see it. He's messing with you, Rowan responded. He's leading us around like puppets. No, Marin whispered. He's drawing a map. She stood, turning the glove in her hand. The interior lining bore a faded mark, 3 letters etched so lightly she almost missed them. HRP. Her breath caught. Hollow Ridge Police. Rowan reached her side, his face paling when he saw the inscription. These were issued in the 80s, standard winter gear, and discontinued 32 years ago, Marin added. Could be from the evidence locker. No, she said, the leathers worn from use. These weren't stored, they were worn. For years. Rowan's expression twisted. You're telling me? Yes, Marin said, her voice steady, despite the storm blowing against her face. The killer was police. The wind tore at the branches overhead as if the forest itself reacted to the revelation. Rain pounded harder, a relentless drumbeat marking the seconds slipping away. We need to get back, Rowan said. We need to review the roster right now. No time, Marin said. He's taken Lily. She doesn't have until morning. He's accelerating tonight means something. He said tomorrow, Rowan argued. For him, Marin replied, tomorrow begins whenever he decides it does. Another crack of lightning tore the sky open. For an instant, white light flooded the forest, and Marin saw him. A figure standing far off between the trees. Still. Tall. Coat rippling in the storm. One glove missing. Watching her. Lightning flickered again. He disappeared. Marin bolted forward. Detective, wait, Rowan shouted, crashing through branches behind her. But she was already sprinting into the darkness. Adrenaline surging, flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she tore through mud and roots. The storm swallowed sound, swallowed distance, swallowed him. She reached the spot where he stood. Empty. A faint imprint in the mud where a boot had been only moments ago. The same vintage pattern, the same chilling familiarity. Marin's breath ripped in and out of her chest. She looked around, rain blurring her vision. He was here, Rowan said, catching up. He's playing with us. No, she whispered. He is guiding us. Guiding us where? Before she could answer, Hale's voice exploded through the radio. Detective Cole, we found something. You need to come back now. The precinct buzzed like an exposed nerve when Marin walked through the doors. Officers shouting orders, printers spitting out files, monitors flickering with new information. The storm hammered at the windows, turning them into trembling sheets of water. Hale approached with a stack of folders. We pulled all officers, staff, and volunteers from 79 to 82, cross-referenced with disciplinary actions, transfers, medical leaves, retirements. And Marin demanded. Hale swallowed. We found 4 men with access. 3 are dead. The 4th. He hesitated. Say it, Marin snapped. Detective Henry Roth. Marin froze. The name echoed inside her skull like a gavel striking metal. Roth. He'd been a senior officer during the original investigation. Well-respected, quiet, kept to himself. Retired early due to health issues. Moved to an unknown location. Records were missing pieces inexplicably deleted years ago. Marin remembered the old case photos. Roth standing in the background, watching, always watching. Where is he now? Marin asked. Hale shook his head. His last known address was a cabin off Ridgeway Trail, but it's been abandoned for years. Utilities shut off. No forwarding info. Marin clenched her jaw. He never left Hollow Ridge. He knows the terrain better than anyone. He knows the precinct. He knows our patterns. Rowan stepped forward. If Roth is the killer, why reveal himself now? Marin looked at the photograph of Lily Harper. Because he knows he's running out of time, she said. He's old now. He wants one last ritual, and he wants an ending. Then we check the cabin, Rowan said. No, Marin replied immediately. That's too obvious. And he's never where we expect him to be. Lightning illuminated the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Hale stared at the map. If not the cabin, then where? Marin scanned the terrain of Hollow Ridge in her mind. Forest, overlook, roadways, old service buildings, abandoned structures, places tied to the original investigation, places untouched for decades. And then it hit her. A place she had overlooked completely. A place he had been part of. A place soaked in the echoes of old cases. The old substation, she whispered. Rowan frowned. Substation. Marin grabbed her coat. The auxiliary building used in the 80s for overflow case storage. They shut it down years ago. Nobody uses it. No cameras, no patrols. And Roth would know every inch of it, Hale said. Marin was already moving. He wants tomorrow. Then we get there before he starts it. Sirens wailed as they rushed back into the storm. The killer had chosen the battlefield, but this time Marin wasn't walking into his ritual. She was coming to end it. The convoy sliced through the storm like a fleet of ghosts' lights strobing across the drenched road sirens muffled by the pounding rain. The wipers thrashed violently, fighting to keep the world visible. But tonight, Hollow Ridge felt like a place trying to disappear, swallowed by darkness, drowned by a storm that seemed almost orchestrated to mirror the night Emily Carter vanished. Marin drove at the front jaw, clenched her hands, gripping the wheel tight enough for her knuckles to whiten. Hale sat beside her, radio in hand, scanning for updates. Rowan followed close behind. Every officer in the task force was mobilized, though Marin knew this chase had narrowed to a single path, hers. Lightning flashed, revealing the old service road that branched off into the forest. Weeds crawled through cracks in the asphalt. The sign for the substation was barely legible rust eating away its edges. He'll be there. Marin said, her voice taut, almost cold. He always returns to places tied to the investigation. That's where he started. That's where he'll end it. Hale nodded grimly. If Roth is really our guy, he spent years roaming between these buildings. He knows every blind spot, which means Marin added Lily is still alive. Rowan's voice crackled over the radio. Detective 2 minutes out. Backup is positioned at the highway split. No vehicles entering or leaving. Copy, Marin responded. The road narrowed into a tunnel of trees' branches whipping the roof of the car, as if the forest itself was warning them to turn back. But Marin pressed forward, accelerating. The substation came into view, a squat concrete building half swallowed by vines and darkness. Broken windows. A collapsed gutter hanging like a crooked arm. The storm crashed against it in sheets, making it look almost submerged. Hale swallowed hard. He chose this for a reason. He chose this, Marin said softly, because it's where his story was born. She killed the engine. Silence, except for the rain's assault. Marin stepped out, rain instantly soaking her coat. The storm felt sharper up here, like the ridge was amplifying it. Hale and Rowan joined her. Officers fanned out guns, raised flashlights slicing through the sheets of water. A metal door on the building's side creaked in the wind. Not fully open, not fully closed. Inviting. Marin approached it, slow, steady, each footstep deliberate. Her flashlight beam skimmed across the doorframe. Scratches. Old. Deep, like nails dragged across it. Her pulse quickened. She pushed the door gently. A gush of stale air burst out, thick, cold, musty with decay. The flashlight pierced the darkness inside, revealing a narrow hallway lined with old bulletin boards and tattered posters from the 80s. Mildew crawled across the walls. The ceiling sagged in places where water had seeped in, staining the tiles with dark, ugly streaks. "This place feels wrong," Hale whispered behind her. "It is wrong," Marin replied. They entered. Their footsteps echoed down the corridor, distorted by the building's age, the walls warping each sound like voices just out of reach. Wind howled through broken vents. Something dripped steadily from a pipe overhead, drop, 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 like a metronome marking the seconds running out. A door ahead stood slightly ajar. Marin's flashlight caught movement, just a flicker so quick she almost doubted it. But she didn't doubt anything anymore. "He's here," she murmured. She pushed the door open. Inside was a large operations room, once filled with desks and old analog equipment. Now it was a graveyard of overturned chairs, decaying paperwork, and dust thick enough to muffle sound. But another scent braided through the damp air, something faintly sweet metallic. Blood. Fresh. Hale cursed under his breath. Marin followed the scent to a trail leading behind a row of rusted filing cabinets. Her beam revealed a smear on the concrete floor, small, uneven. Not enough for death. Enough for fear. She rounded the corner and nearly tripped on the object lying in the beam of her light. A shoe. Lily's. The same floral-patterned sneaker she wore in the picture. Rowan knelt to examine it. Warm. Not long ago. "He's close," Marin whispered. "Very close." A faint echo reverberated from deeper in the building. A metallic sound. Soft. Deliberate. A door closing. Marin rose. "He's moving her." They followed the noise through another hallway, narrower, darker, lined with old breaker boxes and abandoned supply crates. The storm's rumble became muffled. Here, the walls were thicker, choking sound like a tomb. A faint light glowed from under a door at the end. Rowan raised his gun. "On your signal." But Marin lifted a hand. "Wait." She stepped closer, listening not just with her ears, but with instinct sharpened across this entire investigation. Her heart slowed. Her breath steadied. A sound seeped through the door. Breathing. Not one voice. Two. One slow, measured, calm. The other restrained, shaking, fearful. "Lily." Marin nodded. Rowan kicked the door. The wooden frame splintered inward. The room inside was small, concrete, windowless. An old storage chamber repurposed into something darker. A single bulb swung overhead, casting jagged shadows across the floor. In the center of the room, Lily Harper was tied to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, tears streaking her face. She looked up as the officers burst in hope, flooding her panicked eyes. Rowan rushed to her. Hale moved to cover the room, but Marin didn't step forward. She froze. Because the other breath in the room, the calm one, had gone silent the moment the door opened. And the shadows in the far corner shifted, slowly, separate from the swinging bulb. Something detached from the darkness. Tall, thin, clad in a soaked coat, one glove missing. Detective Henry Roth stepped into the light. His face was older, carved with age, and deep lines, hair gone white at the sides, eyes sunken but burning with something cold and ancient. Rain still clung to his coat like diamonds under the trembling light. "Detective Cole," he said softly, voice exactly as it sounded on the tape, measured, deliberate, rehearsed. "You found her." Hale lifted his gun, hands up now. Roth didn't move, didn't blink. "Poor Lily," he murmured. "She reminds me of the first one, so quiet, so trusting." Marin stepped forward slowly. "Roth, it's over." Roth smiled faintly. "Over? No. You misunderstand." His eyes flicked to Lily, then back to Marin. "This is the beginning." Rowan shouted, hands in the air. Roth raised a single hand, the one without the glove, and held it open, fingers trembling slightly. "The years, they change your bones, slow your blood, but the memory stays pure." Get down, Hale barked. Roth ignored him and looked only at Marin. You were always meant to be the one, he said almost tenderly. I've watched you, listened to you. You chase them like I chase them, with obsession, with hunger. His voice softened further. You understand me. Marin shook her head. No, I understand what you took, and I'm here to stop you. Roth tilted his head, considering her words like a puzzle piece. Then he sighed. You're too late for that. He nodded toward the far wall. A timer. Small. Digital. Red numbers glowing. 000217. The countdown was already running. Hale swore. Rowan bolted toward the device. Roth smiled wider. Tomorrow always comes. Marin lunged toward him, but Roth slipped backward into the shadows with surprising speed for a man his age. She followed, shoving crates aside, pushing through the dark flashlight, cutting through empty air. But he was gone. Marin slammed her hand against the wall, fury burning through her. Rowan shouted, It's a charge. We need bomb squad now. Get Lily out of here, Marin ordered. Everyone move. The officers worked fast, cutting her restraints, lifting her, sprinting toward the exit. The timer ticked down. 000152 000151 000150. Marin ran with them, heart-hammering flashlight, bouncing rain roaring through cracks in the building. Roth's voice echoed in her mind. You were always meant to be the one. The storm swallowed the building as they burst outside, dragging Lily, stumbling through mud boots, slipping. Behind them, deep within the old substation, the red numbers kept falling. 000123, 000122, 000121. Marin turned back toward the door. Roth was somewhere inside, still watching, still waiting. And tomorrow, whatever he had planned wasn't over. Not even close. Rain hammered the ridge like 1,000 frantic fists as the timer bled away inside the old substation, seconds dripping toward inevitability. Officers sprinted through the forest clearing with Lily Harper in their arms, mud-splashing flashlights, shaking radios crackling with frantic voices. The storm swallowed their shouts, devoured the sound of fear, twisted it all into one long, trembling roar. But Marin didn't run with them. She turned back, toward the doorway, toward the dark chamber where Henry Roth had vanished like a ghost slipping between centuries. 000114 000113 000112. Marin Rowan's voice tore through the storm. Get back! It's going to blow! She didn't answer. She stepped toward the building, rain soaking her hair, her coat, her skin until she felt carved out of cold stone. Detective Hale shouted, struggling through the mud, carrying Lily toward the vehicles. Don't, Marin, don't. But Marin kept moving. Every instinct, every trained reflex, every ounce of self-preservation screamed for her to turn around. But the case wasn't just a case anymore. It was a promise, a vow, a debt she refused to leave unpaid. Lightning split the sky. Thunder cracked the ridge open. And suddenly the storm felt quiet compared to the voice echoing inside her mind. You were always meant to be the one. She stepped through the doorway. The hallway swallowed her. The dripping pipes whispered. The storm became muffled. The air thickened with dust and old grief. Her flashlight beam trembled across the floor. Empty, silent, except a faint scrape somewhere deeper, a shuffle, a breath. Roth wasn't running. He was waiting. The timer ticked down through the walls. 000058 000057 000056. Marin moved through the darkness. Each breath steady, controlled, her heartbeat pounding like a war drum behind her ribs. The operations room stood empty now. Lily's chair toppled, rope cut the bulb above, swinging violently from the draft. The glove she had found earlier pressed against her palm like a relic of the dead. Roth, she called out. Her voice echoed through the corridors. You don't get to walk away. Lightning flashed through a broken window. A silhouette moved, tall, crooked, still wearing that soaked coat as if it were stitched to his skin. Roth's voice drifted from the dark, soft as dust. Walk away, no detective. I'm guiding you. Her flashlight caught his face. The gaunt cheeks, the pale eyes gleaming with a fanatic's clarity. Time had carved him down to sinew and steel, but in the dim light he seemed ageless, as if the decades had preserved him for this final moment. You brought Lily here to kill her, Marin said. No, Roth whispered. I brought her here so you would find her. And the bomb, Marin snapped. A book needs an ending, he murmured. This place began my story. It must end it too. She stepped closer, gun raised. Step into the light. He didn't. He merely tilted his head, studying her as if she were the subject of a long, obsessive portrait. You know why I chose you, Roth said. Of all the detectives, all the hunters, only you looked at the case like I did. Marin's jaw tightened. I'm nothing like you. Oh, but you are, he said gently. You chase them. The missing, the forgotten, the overlooked. You breathe their stories until they consume you and I. We are the only ones who still remember them. The difference, Marin said fiercely, is that I remember them to bring justice. You remember them to relive the pain. Roth chuckled softly. Pain. Yes, pure. Unfiltered. That night, the storm, the fear, the way the world held its breath, I have been trying to recreate it ever since. Emily. The others. And now Lily. But it needed you. The final piece. His eyes gleamed. Tomorrow begins with you. The timer beeped faintly behind the walls. 000039000038000037. Marin stepped closer, voice low, steady. Where's the trigger, Roth? Where is it? Roth smiled sadly. You're too late. He stepped back into the shadows, the storm casting strobing glimpses of him through the flicker of lightning. No, Marin growled. She lunged forward, but Roth slipped behind one of the heavy breaker boxes. His coat vanished into darkness with a whisper of movement almost too soft to hear. Marin followed. The concrete room beyond was filled with rows of machinery, the old power grid equipment humming faintly, metal-corroded wires dangling like veins. Her light darted between pillars, corners, shadows. He was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Only the ticking. 000025 000024 000023. Marin Rowan's voice thundered through her radio. Fall back! That's an order! She ignored it. Her beam scanned every inch until it caught something on the floor. A hatch! Slightly open. A hidden sublevel. Her pulse surged. She pulled the hatch up. A ladder descended into the black. And below, footsteps. Soft. Retreating. She followed without hesitation. The smell of damp concrete thickened. The space narrowed. The darkness turned total. Her flashlight fell upon old case files scattered across the ground reports from the 80s photos Marin had only seen in archives' missing persons posters yellowed with age. He had kept them. All of them. She moved deeper. A tunnel stretched ahead, carved through the substation's foundation, an old maintenance corridor, the long forgotten by the town. The walls dripped with moisture. Rusted pipes creaked overhead. The storm above became a distant rumble. The timer's beeps echoed down here like a heartbeat. 000014, 000013, 000012. Roth's voice floated from the darkness. There is no catching me, detective. I already have, she said. He stepped partially into the beam of her flashlight, close enough for her to see the lines carved across his face by obsession, but far enough to remain a creature of the dark. Shoot me, he whispered. She steadied her aim. End it, he breathed. Marin's finger hovered over the trigger. Roth smiled and stepped backward into the shadows. Something metallic clicked. Her blood turned to ice. She turned her beam downward. The detonator wasn't in the upper room. It was here, wired into the tunnel, armed, irreversible. 000007000060000005. Marin Move Rowan screamed over the radio. She ran. The tunnel shook. Pipes burst. Concrete cracked. The explosion erupted behind her like the earth tearing open. A violent blast of heat and dust hurled her forward, flinging her through the ladder shaft, the wave of force roaring up the hatch and ripping through the old substation. She slammed into the hallway wall. Pain tore through her shoulder. Debris rained. Lights shattered. The storm outside roared even louder, as if trying to drown out the detonation. Officers dragged her out of the collapsing building. The sky flashed white as the substation belched flame and smoke. Lily screamed from the convoy, trembling in a blanket. Rowan and Hale carried Marin across the mud-soaked clearing as the building crumbled behind them. Then, silence, broken only by the storm's fading growl. Marin gasped, coughing, dust vision blurring. Rowan hovered over her face, pale. You okay? She pushed herself up weakly. Roth? Hale shook his head. No body. The blast took out the entire lower level. He got away, Rowan muttered in disbelief. Marin didn't answer. She stared at the burning ruin, her mind replaying every step, every word, every flicker of Roth's silhouette. Something cold settled in her chest. He planned the escape tunnel, she whispered. He planned where he'd stand, how far he'd be from the blast before it hit. Rowan exhaled shakily. So he's alive. Marin stood slowly, rain washing soot from her face. No, he's not alive. Hale frowned. Then what is he? She looked toward the tree line where the forest swallowed the ridge, dark, endless, ancient. A ghost with a pulse, she said. A man who knows how to vanish. A predator who's been slipping through cracks for 40 years. Rowan stepped beside her. He'll come back. No, Marin said softly, eyes narrowing at the forest. He never left. Lightning flashed. For a split second, a figure stood among the trees, still, watching, one glove missing. Marin blinked. He vanished. The storm finally began to ease. But inside Hollow Ridge, inside Marin, inside the wounds of the case, the cold never left. And somewhere in the dark, somewhere between memory and shadow, the man they hunted for 40 years was hunting again.